form of the amendment to the police bill, the amendment to the PCA, Police Complaints Authority, the constitutional amendment, and the amendment to the police regulation. I don't think there was a report as such, because, of course, the person who would be able to enlighten us on this would be
Samraj.
Samraj.
Yeah.
Good. But the chairman of the Law Enforcement Commission was there, Samraj was there, and Sir Ellis Clark, and Sir Ellis. Some of us actually did some of the policies, but Sir Ellis was the main person involved with the drafting. Then he would pass it over to Samraj, who would do the nitty-gritty. He would generally, review the drafting and guide it. And towards the end, Samraj was in fact working very closely then with the Prime Minister and the Secretary, as he himself would tell you, especially with respect to the changes that we did not really anticipate. But the way I'm seeing it here, I got the impression from the chairman, from you, Professor, that you have two committees. One committee. All right.
Too
All right.
cumbersome, so better you have one draft. So right?
Because I got the impression one committee would look at drafting. All right. While the other committee would look at the changes to be made. But that's not how it is. All right. Okay. All right.
Nineteen 90 something.
Well, it started off in 2000 and it went for about 3 years until about 2003. Thereabout.
I'm just sending a message to Mr. Harry. I don't know if you will reply, but I'm just inquiring whether there was a formal report.
All right.
We could do that. If so, I can assist in having it. We need a
Sure.
report.
Actually, in 2005, I tried to access to find out whether or not there was a report, and like you said, Mr. Daniel, there wasn't. I don't think there was a comprehensive document. It may have been a series of amendments, but we could be wrong. So I guess Mr. Harrison could confirm that.
Yeah, he would know.
Yeah.
There will be a report, a proper policy paper, which will inform the drafting of the legislation so that we can see what the intention is more clearly.
Dr. Ryan will be the secretary, will make sure all those facilities are provided.
The complete power to manage the police service was to avoid all the bureaucracy that we still faced with, so that he could be in the business of running his police service and ensure that crime is reduced and you have a safe society and that kind of thing. One of the things that the ministry had to do in last year was the accounting powers in order for him to be able to manage was still in the hands of the PS. And we recognized that we had to allow him to be an accounting officer, and I think that was done last year or sometime this year, I can't remember. But very, very, recently, we had to make him an accounting officer so that he could give effect to his powers, whatever that may be, when we try to roll it out, so that he could sign his own contracts and, all the things that the PS would have done for him, he is doing that for himself now. So he would enter into his own contracts and do all those sort of accounting things. Madam PS, you're an accounting officer, so you would know better than me, what is required, so.
That Mr. Daniel is talking about at any time?
No, I wasn't there from
weren't
so
there?
far back, I was part of the team to actually get involved in the drafters and the drafting and also some parts of the technical stuff, but because I wasn't a police officer, I'm very new to the process. We had the then Commissioner of Police, Trevor Paul. We had Ms. Hetty Liebert, who was advising on HR. One of the things that we didn't have, which in hindsight we ought to have, but I think the exigencies of the exercise didn't require us to have certain people who we thought may have frustrated the process, and I apologize for that on behalf of the powers that be then. So we didn't have the CPO involved. And in implementing the legislation, now we recognize that there are a lot of things that we have to change because, for example, medical matters. We changed legislation without going to CPO, for example. I think we could not have taken away your power to, no, not your power, where you are, God help me.
I think you're talking about negotiations.
Yeah, something where you are injured in the course of duty, right, whether or not it's with work or otherwise, you're entitled to, yeah, now in the new legislation, we put a limitation so that they're entitled to this benefit only if they're injured in the course of duty, and that was not the case before. And the former CPO, Sandra Marchak, if I'm not mistaken, told us that that's wrong. We had to fix that, So we recognize now in living the legislation that there are a lot of things that we have to fix.
But we were very, very careful not to trespass on what had been negotiated.
Yeah, we couldn't. We ought not to have.
Yeah, whether it had to do with pension or whether it had to do with
Yeah.
but there might have been.
Yeah, we did that. So.
That really has to be re-examined, and I'll tell you for two reasons. One is that the police commissioners repeatedly have been complaining that they have all this responsibility, but they didn't have the authority accordingly. And I can say so because I recall they appeared before Parliament several times before the Joint Select Committee. I was chairman of the Joint Select Committee at the time, and I was the one who was probing as to accountability and performance. But they keep telling me, Snaggs, Roach, everybody who came before us, Bernard, Philbert, this thing kept being repeated. We don't have the authority. So Alvin is right that when the two commissioners...
They invented the phrase, let's pull off.
Yeah. Bernard invented that phrase and it got... I didn't use it this morning. I used a different phrase. I'm more than accountable. But as Daniel is saying, it got a little runaway because if I recollect now, the powers meant administrative power to bypass, which we all complain about. Bureaucracy, you have to be careful because it is bureaucracy that promotes accountability. So that balance is what we'll have to keep here. And that balance was lost. So that's what Jillian is, we have to, but hold on, I want to finish this. So the complete powers now is being used for wider coverage than was designed in the first instance, to the point where the issue about the role of the Ministry of National Security over the police service becomes blurred. And I don't think it's disclosing any secret, but in my meetings with the Minister of National Security, as a forerunner to this exercise, he himself is in a quandary, and I cited the example of leave, because he would tell me, but you're asking me if I give leave to the gentleman. He tell me no, and he wants to ask the same question I'm asking, well, where does this authority, because it's not a matter you want to stop people from traveling and going abroad, but you want to know you have to fill a vacancy quickly in an acting appointment, which has serious implications. Sorry, Keith, no, I think Keith.
I mean, not have the power of on the issue of leave is in the regulations that is the minister who approves leave with respect to the commissioner and the deputy commissioner. So he ought to have approved he would have had to approve the leave, and I think in the interest of good governance or the furtherance of good governance, the PSC ought to have been informed. I think there are some things that we don't need to legislate, but we ought to know that we should do. But that part about who gives approval for leave is in the regulations,
As
yeah.
well as in his contract.
Pardon me?
As well as in the
It is in his
individual's contract.
And even if it's not there, it's yeah, it's here.
No, it's just the issue seems to be all the time, though, inefficient public service, because that's what we're trying to get around here. Because it's functioning effectively, then we would not have been here. We would not have had the. So, and I think that is something else we really need to look at, because, and it still comes back to what structure do we create, if you want to call it that, that will be free of those encumbrances which we face in the current system. Because, and I think that is critical, because it comes back to me all the time that is really the key to the thing. What structure we formulate that will remove most of those encumbrances, then should be able to, we should be able to do so many things better then after that. Because to me, most of the things will come from the way we are configured and so on, how we have your staff organized, the level of competencies and so on that there would be able to carry out the function effectively.
It's not just the structure, it's the people and how they work the structure and the systems. You know, because from when I've been meeting with Professor Diosaran and some of the problems he's facing, there are problems that can be fixed within our current systems. It is just that it requires somebody to put extra personnel to look at it. One classic example was he wanted increased financial accountability. And there's nothing in the public service. I mean, you've just said that the police commissioner has been given accountability. Contract officers can manage funds in the public service. All that is required is that you put systems in place and you train people, because, you know, if somebody's coming in new and they don't know public service systems, you have to expose them to the systems and help them to understand it. And I think that is more of the problem that has been happening. It's not that the structure can't deliver, it is more the people and how the people work with each other.
But in fact, you're right to some extent.
However, there is an issue with the structure as well as the issue of resourcing and accountability. In terms of resourcing, I agree with you fully. Contract person can be made an accountable officer. I was the CEO of Self-Help for a few years as well, and I was the accounting officer. And that is a contract position. So the argument of a contract person cannot be an accounting officer is really contrary to practice.
But the police commissioner is a contract officer.
Yes.
And he's in charge of his budget.
So the argument that's being used to say that we can't have funds resided here is an old archaic argument that really doesn't hold any water. But in terms of the performance of the mandate, the fulfillment of the mandate of the PSC, we have to look at what is monitoring, not just control of the governance of the PSC, oversight over the commissioner, deputy commissioner, and the depth to which it must go in terms of the police service. I think that is a secondary issue to the issue of monitoring. What do we mean by monitoring? And appraisal is clear. Appeals is clear. I think the monitoring issue is the bigger bugbear, because to what extent, if you want to really transform the police service, you have to do extensive and intensive monitoring so that you could point out where are the weaknesses, give them time to correct those issues, and then go back and make sure the issues have been corrected. As well as new technology and methodologies come on stream, you have to see to what extent those things are being implemented and impacted upon the population. So the monitoring aspect is the biggest issue for the PSC as opposed to the appraisal. The other major issue is the selection process. The current system really can't work. The selection for the cop and deputy cop. The current system really can't work. Yeah, that recruitment process.
But that can be sorted out
Right, that can be.
by introducing a proper system. All right? But let me just quickly go back to that concept of monitoring. I don't really have a management concept here. Monitoring is an element of management.
Well, it came out of project management. Where
You have a project management cycle.
I could monitor your performance. I could monitor how you spend your resources or allocate your resources and so on. So in a way, it's a management function. And I guess it's also a part of the oversight function. So that it calls for a stronger role for the PSC.
Also clarity in either constitutional provision or in subsequent legislation. To say, to specify, to spell out what
It's
is
this monitoring, and what's the extent of the monitoring that the PSC is expected to perform?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we were expected, and I expected to finish by 1 p.m. after lunch, and we are reaching that stage. But I need to tell you two things. This work is not mandated exclusively by the Police Service Commission. This is not an exercise set up by the Police Service Commission. It is set up jointly to the Prime Minister's office and the Police Service Commission. The team that was selected was jointly selected by the Prime Minister and the Police